And we are back recording here, but we got a nice guest on the pod today. Christian is the founder and owner of WooBound. I'll let you get in more details there, Christian, but essentially like an SEO agency, SEO shop.
Yeah, no, and thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited about this episode. I think it's going to be a blast. So WooBound is my SEO agency that I run. Uh, been, I've been doing SEO for 12 years, right? Specifically local SEO. So it was just, I had to learn it the hard way, launching my own projects, failing, and I have a lot of failures in the story. And then eventually, once I figured it out, I was like, okay, well, I think I can get the first business, so I can do it for them. And that's how WooBound started. And this has been growing, thank God, and have big plans coming. And obviously, we have the podcast, right? So it's a lot of things happening there.
I was gonna say you have you got some really solid content that you put out, and I think
Appreciate
it's always a giveaway when somebody has a nice background that like you do some
it.
content.
Yeah, and this is it's funny because I watched like videos from 2 years ago where it was so basic, and I'm like, why did I post that video? Like
Yeah,
the background was so bad, and so it's been in the works for several years. I wish I could tell you it was quick, but yeah,
You just
it's
got to
always a
do
fun
it.
thing.
That's the
Just gotta do it. Yeah,
that's what me and Trevor were talking about. Like even starting this podcast, we're like, we don't know what we're doing. Even probably the first couple of podcasts. I mean, we're still learning now, obviously, but the first couple of podcasts were pretty rough. You could tell we're like, oh, we're trying to like make this like a very like timing the transition of like what we're going to talk about. It wasn't very
yeah,
organic, I would say.
yeah,
But we are just like, man, let's just get out as many as we can, and
yep.
just it'll naturally flourish into. I don't know. You'd be a lot more comfortable on the podcast and etc. I think this is like number 27. Our goal
That's
is to get to
awesome.
100. So I think we'll get there. We clip about one a week. So yeah, it'll take a little bit, but it's been fun. It's cool catch up. Like honestly, I kind of look at it as like, hey, it's time for on Fridays that we typically record. It's like I get an hour to catch up with Trevor on what the hell's going on in the week, and then if we have
it's
guests
nice.
on, include them too. So
Yeah, it's funny because it's to me, I've been trying to just do it on my own, right? No guests, just me talking, because I just all the time, all these ideas come to mind or my hater thoughts, right? It's like I don't agree with what Google said, right? So I just need to talk it out, say it out loud. It's like why not just recording, right? And that's been like my mentality is like I just want a place so I can talk, and even if the comment haters come, at least I vent out, right? Like I can talk about shit and things happening.
do you really get that much haters though? I mean, I think
Oh my
I don't know.
God. I've got some stories.
Yeah.
Cause the YouTube channel, I started it 6 years ago and I was going full at it. I wasn't doing great. Like that's the beginning of WooBound, right? So we would get one client and then 2, 3 months later, I was doing the sale and I was doing the work. So obviously you go do the work and then there's no leads coming. This client leaves and you're back at zero, right? So I was trying to drive out the channel and there was this guy that he spent hours doing research on me and he found every single picture he could find and just kind of like saying, like I was faking it and the fake to until you make it, right? And I'm like, I'm not faking anything. Like I'm in the middle of the hustle. Like I'm showing you that I'm trying to grow the agency. I don't have it all. Well, anyway, this guy just went at it. He found like a picture of me when I was chubby or chubbier, and he went at it. And then, I was driving a beaten up car, and he talked about my shitty car. Dude, I don't think I would have ever spent that much time even on my own story. And he put
Yeah.
together an article, like an entire article about me.
Wow. What a piece of
It's
shit. Like
That's
to
yeah,
wild.
spend that much
yeah.
time on hating someone that's just trying to actually do the work. It's not like you were trying to
Yeah.
sell some sort of fake dream. You're doing the fucking work.
No, it really was like either me learning or sharing, right? Like it's when I launched the podcast, I shared a lot of videos on how I did it, right? Like which podcast host did I go with? What camera did I buy? And here's why, right? So it was a lot of just sharing what I learned. It wasn't really me telling you how to become rich quickly. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I can see that where there is a lot of those types of personalities out there that are trying to sell that kind of get quick rich
Yeah.
type of scheme. And but if you have it backed up, like you're genuinely trying to do something, you don't have everything figured out, and you put a point of vulnerability out there, and this guy then just shits on you, man, that guy is just a fucking loser. It's, he's got some issues himself on that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what
So
about have you had any hate on like certain takes that you that you might have about Google? Because I can get the whole like, hey, the kind of entrepreneurial lifestyle, that kind of hate. Like, is this guy really doing it, etc. But like, I guess I'm curious on like specific like SEO tactics. I only bring it up because I got a little story I'll get into. When I worked for a very big agency, they pimped me out. It's just the only fucking word I'll use, to go speak at a conference. I was like, sure, I'll go, whatever. I've done some conferences before. And I get up on stage, and man, it was around when like Penguin updates were happening and link building was like a no-no. That was maybe probably 10 years ago. And I remember going up there and I was going through like the SEO strategy, this and that. And I was very blunt about like, hey, you know what? Links work. I'm here to tell you, links work. If you buy links, most likely your rankings will go up. Sure, you want to make sure they're tasteful. You're not over optimizing your anchor text, but it is a calculated risk to get rankings. Crowd liked it. Talked to people afterwards, etc. Man, 2 weeks later, I get a call from, I guess he was my, at the time, boss. I never really talked to him much. And he's like, hey, I heard that you were talking about buying links at the conference when you were speaking. And I'm like, dude, I'm a grown adult at this point. And he starts to like talk down to me as far as what I should or should not say, because it could look negative upon the agency. And I was like, okay, a week later, that's honestly one of the triggering points for me to leave this agency and then start my own like path with like my first company with Ricardo, Elevated Search. But I was like, dude, you're going to tell me what I can or cannot say because it fucking works, dude. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about because you're actually not doing the work. I'm the one doing the work. And you're going to come shit on me a week later, 2 weeks later. It was the most awkward phone call. It was like, I felt like my parent was trying to yell at me. I'm like, dude, I'm a grown adult.
That's
Like,
pathetic.
man, fuck off.
that's
so,
terrible.
yeah, I only asked that, tell you that story. Just curious if you've had, other people shit on you about tactics.
And I'm glad you asked that question because this like back in, I guess, let's call it season 1, right? Like several years ago, I was very neutral for that reason. Like I didn't want anybody to come at me. So I was very neutral. I typically don't tend to agree with Google, but I was trying to be polite about it. Season 2, which is what's going on this year, I have definitely been a lot more realistic, right? Like sharing really, like I don't really give a shit if you don't agree with me because this is, I mean, I've been doing this and Steve and I, we talked about this all the time. Is like, yes, Google keeps updating and changing, but the same shit still works, right?
Who's calling? Google.
Oh, Google's calling
they
you.
Fucking know we're fucking talking about them.
They heard us talking.
That's a heck of a ringtone you got there, Steve.
Yeah,
by the way,
it's my R2D2 ringtone, bro.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Sorry, Christian.
That's all right. So far, not really. I mean, all the attacks have been. I mean, I got a guy attacking my haircut. It's like, what the hell is going on with your haircut? I'm like, dude, like, are you really commenting on my haircut? So far in season 2, nothing yet. But I will keep you posted because I don't think it's just a matter of time.
That's so funny. So I think, dude, someone coming after you about a freaking haircut, just diffuse. Like I always like joking around, like let's just diffuse all of our weaknesses right up front, so you can't make fun of them. It's like, hey, I got a funny mustache. I don't have eyebrows. My hair's kind of going away. It's like, what you want, bro? I was joking around.
Yeah, exactly.
I was joking around with my friends last weekend, and a little tangent, but I think we'll get there. It's a new dating app idea. Okay, I was like, hello, sharks. And of course, having a couple of drinks. I'm gonna pitch you a new app idea here. And so this app is you need to put out attributes that are like your worst attributes on your profile. And that's how you're going to lead into this. So we're just kind of clearing the water first off. And I was joking around. I was like, so, babe, this is my profile. This is my wife. I was like, I have hobbit feet. I have a crooked spine and have no eyebrows. Are you in? It was perfect. So that's my random dating app idea.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I do have an actual SEO question. I do got to jump here in a couple minutes, but I do have an SEO question that I'm curious about your take. And we didn't, script this or anything. So like, apology if I'm putting you on the spot here. I feel like I keep seeing this, like specifically like in the Twitterverse here, of guys talking about programmatic SEO. And I keep seeing this like time and time again. And I think the basic premise is like trying to rank for a specific keyword makes sense, but in today's day and age, you have to have a ton of content that's around kind of like a keyword theme. So it seems like with like all these LLM tools and AI on the rise, programmatic SEO is a thing where it's like, hey, we're going to build out thousands of pages of content, because the more pages of content, the better that authority of that site's going to be and more traffic you're going to see over time. I guess, did I describe that right? And also, is that like actually a thing? Is that like a direction of, I don't know, this space here is like, we need more content on your site? Is that, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
And I mean, I hate to be the guy that says, it depends, but like it really depends.
For sure, for sure.
So I mean, but you got it right. I mean, programmatic SEO is like, now with AI, it's trending, right? I guess the new concept is like, I've been doing programmatic shit for like since it was cool. Like I had
So
a
that's
WordPress
been a
plugin.
thing.
It's always been a thing. It's just it wasn't sexy. Let's call it like that, right? Like it was just this shady tactic where like you're just rinse and repeating your content and something varies on it to make it look different. Obviously with AI is a lot smarter because I used to use this plugin that would basically, you give it a paragraph and give her 3 or 4 words, and then the paragraph or the plugin would rewrite the paragraph with using the different words. So every page would sound different or different words, but it said the same thing. So I've seen people just completely flop it, right? Because they try to do like thousands of pages at a time, and it's not quality. But I've also heard some really good studies or where they're using AI software, but they're also doing that human touch, and it works. So I think bottom line is not so much a tactic, it's just really make helpful content, right? Like really make content that brings something to society. It's not just placeholder insert, right? It's not just template or copy paste. It's like, I mean, I've experimented with full AI written. I don't touch it. It ranks because sometimes the article is good, right? So I think it really is just that quality is like, is it really a good article? It's not even worth a shit.
Yeah, I
That's so
think too, like
interesting.
my take on like the programmatic term of it all, it's just
I don't like how it's called
it's
programmatic
marketers
SEO.
being marketers, right? They're
Yeah.
talking about something, a tactic that we've done for a long time. I think
Yep.
maybe they attach programmatic to it because you can do it at scale now because of
So
AI.
that's where the
That's
programmatic
where the
label.
programmatic
Yeah.
kind of label comes in. You still need to have the keyword ideation, etc., creating the content, making unique, publishing it, putting it on the right schedule and frequency. But yeah, it can blow up in your face if you're producing too much content of low quality.
Yeah.
Google's going to, slap you for that potentially. But
It is
there's
fascinating
a
how
way to
like
sell it though, right? It's programmatic SEO. It sounds cool. It sounds different, but it's
I
just
was
SEO.
I was literally just gonna say that. It's like it's already been it's like majority of ideas and concepts like have already been discussed and have been out there. It's just like repurposed in a different way.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude,
Where it
the
sounds like this is
evolution of
just
like
like just
SEO.
branded.
I think this is probably an SEO industry issue where we kind of rephrase things like
Yes.
link building. That started as link building. It changed to like content marketing or content marketing outreach because you couldn't say link building.
It's
And
all
now it's
about the
full circle
branding.
back to link building.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing for it. So
All
it's how you phrase it for it all.
right, cool. I gotta drop. I
I
gotta
know you
drop.
got to jump.
Curious to hear the rest
Good
of this
luck
stuff.
on your next call there. Drive some
Thanks, y'all.
business there. But yeah, thanks for joining us shortly. But
Thank you.
we'll catch
All
up
right,
with you. We'll
I'll
stay on
catch you
here.
guys later.
Christian, we'll continue on.
For sure.
All right.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just shocking, right? Like the terminology that comes up. I mean, it is, a marketing tactic. I get it, but it's like, this is the same thing over and over. Like what's going on?
Yeah, no, I really don't think a lot of the principles from when we started SEO, like the core principles, still hold value, can get you rankings. There might be some tricks that are
Yeah.
out there that you can try out and test that'll work, but solid on page content.
Yeah, we always come down to the core, right? Like
Technical
every
SEO
time. Yeah.
and like some link building, you have a good chance of ranking. So, yeah, it's one of those things where I heard an analogy once, like the SEO industry is kind of like an auto mechanic, right? There's a lot of shitty ones out there. that will tell you something's broken, upcharge this, and you're not really sure what's underneath the hood of it all. But once you find a good auto mechanic, you stick with them, right? And that's where I kind of make that analogy. It's like, hey, this is what I'm genuinely trying to tell you how I think it works, and case studies around it.
And I think you have a valid point, because there's been cases where I have a client, killing it, and they just want to reduce budget. They want something cheaper. So of course they reach out to an agency and they're going to do an audit, right? And I hear about it as like, when you run an audit, no matter if you're number one on maps and search and Bing and on everywhere, you're going to find something, because, it cannot be perfect. So it's like, well, take the audit with a grain of salt. Like, look at your revenue, look at sales, look at your traffic. Like, are you willing to cut that in half if you go with a cheaper solution? Because obviously the audit is going to find something, right? It's like, especially because you twist the words, right? Like, you twist the report to look like, oh, there's 1,000 good things. Keep those away from the audit. Just show this one thing that is not there.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, even and a lot of these have happened with the automated audit tools that are out there. So like Ahrefs, SEMrush, BrightEdge, all of them, like, they have like their own algorithm. And it's like critical, this, and that. And you actually look at it, you're like, maybe one or two of those are valid that I can address. But even those one or two, they're not like detrimental to your campaign. So even if I fix them and spend hours doing it,
exactly,
it's not going to raise your rankings. It's not worth it. Like, I had a client that, someone else got into his inbox because they did an audit and shared it with them. And like, their biggest discrepancy was like, hey, you're not using titles in your, was it the images or the links? And I'm like, I like actually like the title, like almost like an alternative tag. I was like, from what I know, mostly it's just alt tags that they read. Title is a nice to have if you want to, just replicate it across. But I'm not going to do it over and over again. And even a site with like images, right, and alt tags, that's another one, like an easy pickings that you'll find. Like, oh, a bunch of images on your site, 90% of them don't have alt tags. You're like, well, what are they? They're fucking icons.
As the icons,
like the icons, dude, and like logos. I actually don't want to put alt tags on there because I don't want the page to. Because what happens with the alt tags, people don't know, they appear as text to the search engine. Basic principle. So if you've got a page that's talking about a certain service and then you have like a shit ton of logos, all of a sudden your keyword density score is going to get really weird if you've got like brands, names all thrown in there, and it gets weird. You could stuff them maybe with some keywords in there, but that's a little bit questionable. But but back to the point, it's like it's a false positive, and it's like, oh man. Yeah, so it's like,
And that's where, like, I remind people, is like, that's where your experience as an SEO comes in, right? As you're able to tell people, is like, we can spend 20 hours to fix these alt tags that are the Facebook icon, the Instagram icon on every page. That's not going to do anything. And or just like take it with a grain of salt, leave it like that. Don't touch that. It's not worth it.
Well, it's funny too, because people still don't realize, I swear to God, that those tools and those scores, that's all what they think it is. Google has never told us specifically this is it. So it's like they're making up made up metrics and scoring metrics so they can spend more money and waste your money and time, to be honest. So sure, maybe if you've got 100%. All your other stuff SEO buttoned up for what we want to do, okay, let's go look at filling out some of these random items. But I will say those tools do catch some things that I don't see sometimes, like orphan pages. Like, that's a kind of a cool tool. I know Ahrefs finds. You're like, oh, I didn't even realize that. Like, your Shopify page, your Shopify website is producing a bunch of orphan pages because you're running a lot of promotional. Like, I have a client that they run a lot of promotional emails, and so they create a collections page in Shopify. And when they do that, it's only for email. But the problem is with Shopify, how it's set up by default, it's going to insert it into the XML sitemap, and then it gets crawled, and then it gets indexed, and it's all of a sudden it's like we have a bunch of collection pages we don't need that need to eventually be redirected or not be there in the first place. And like those automated tools, like, oh, I wouldn't really know about those URLs if I didn't know, because it's not crawling the site and finding them per se unless I crawled the XML sitemap. So there are some positives to it. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's great tools out there. It's just always take it with a grain of salt. Don't do everything that comes on the report or the audit or the suggestion. Like, just if you're not an SEO expert, like ask somebody's recommendation. What's your point of view? If you're an SEO, hopefully you're not following it to a T. So That's
That
that. But
makes me think of what's your thoughts on Google Search Console emails that go out?
I mean, if you want my honest opinion, I typically ignore them because I look at them, right, as like, unless it's like a really bad error, most of the time it's just going to be one of those things, right? It's like, okay, well, that would be, in a perfect world, it would be good to fix it, but like, is it worth 10 hours of development to fix it and has no impact on SEO? It's one of those, like, just take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes, I mean, if the website is completely disappeared, right? It's like, oh shit, we got a problem here. But most of the times it's like either a 404 error because of a child page that got created, or a broken link that it was out of our control because it's an external link. The other side went down, right? So, I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I have a very similar kind of feeling that most of the time the warnings, 90% of them are just don't have to worry about them.
Uh-huh.
The only problem is, and it's more from like an agency management client relationship standpoint, is typically the client owns the Google Search Console account. They add us
Uh-huh.
in. So they're getting an
So
email,
they get it. Yep.
right? So they get an email. Maybe my project management manager too gets an email. They're kind of curious. So it's always like, I got to address it quickly. Like, hey, false positive. Like, don't worry about it. Move on. Or I have that conversation with the client. Like, hey, you're going to get these warnings. Just don't worry about them. I'm looking at them. Because they can get kind of overwhelming when they come through. And
Yeah.
it's weird. I see a pattern of like, I guess Search Console sweeping and looking at this for all their accounts. Because all of a sudden, like one day, I'll get like 4 or 5 emails about the same topic. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, 90% of the time, it's nothing to be concerned of. You would, if you're good technical SEO, that's something you check when you're going through your technical audit, and
Yeah.
you'll find those errors up front, and then it'll be just kind of reoccurring issue that happens. Like one of them is like discovered but not indexed, right? Or crawled but
That's
not
a big one.
indexed. Those are the ones that I look at just from a crawl budget standpoint. There's actually an interesting one. I'll probably do a post about it just because we're on the topic. Saw it in Google Search Console. It's a Shopify issue with a certain plugin. So there's a plugin in Shopify that does. You also might like product plugins. So you're like on the product description
Yeah.
page and below it, and it's like, hey, you might also like. It's a great feature to have, upsell your products, etc. Get people navigating through the site. The problem is, I'm not sure if it's done by JavaScript or actually the code itself in HTML, but each of the individual products that are in the products you might also like module, they append a URL structure like a question mark, SDPD equals blah, 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 and it clicks off and then goes to that product page. Well, the problem is there is a canonical tag on that product page, but you're asking Google to crawl all those pages with those URLs in it, which is like a huge spike, like 7,000 URLs, etc. So I've been starting to block that actual URL structure within robots.txt, so they'll eventually not crawl that section. They'll be able to discover the products through the normal discovery path, but they don't need to go through the product page and do it. So it's like a huge increase of crawl budget, even though we don't know what the hell the crawl budget actually is, but they're just spending a lot of time they don't need to do, right? I want them to pay attention to other words. And it's just this one plugin. We reached out to the plugin owner, and they're like, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like the standard like checklist for Shopify now, if they have this certain plugin to block that, and it should help, the crawling experience for it all. So
absolutely. And especially with the numbers they report too, where like you have 100 pages, but you have 7,000 errors and your client freaks out, right?
Yeah. But even at that point, it's like those 7,000 errors are probably not that big of a deal, but they want you to fix them because like someone told them to do so, and you're going to pay someone to do it. It's like, no, that's not effective SEO. Like, come on. It's like distractions. But I can get it. Like, if you don't have that experience, to your point, you wouldn't know that. You would say, shit, Google's telling me this is something big. My client's upset about it. I got to go through this list. So it's like, I think you need to have a good like mentor or just maybe the way that you approach SEO, the theory. Everybody has their own way of kind of doing it,
right?
But like, if you don't have that and you're learning it, it can be super confusing. I can see that you're like wasting your time on all these errors, and it's like, well, why am I not ranking, etc. It's like, okay.
And I mean, they do a good job at the communication, I guess, because it's color coded, right? Like this 7,000, 6,800 of them are in red. The other 200 are yellow. So you see all this red, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. My site's going down.
Yeah, and even like I've had people like in part of those audits, like character length of a title tag or meta description.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, bro, if I'm over a couple pixels or characters,
Yes.
depending on how you look at it, because there's two different philosophies there, it's like it's not that big of a deal. And Google does read past those points. Just saying.
Right.
So
Right.
like, put your most important stuff up front, and if it looks good, I'm not too concerned about it. Like they're not going to deduct, uh, ranking
And then
factor.
that's where, for trying to shrink it, right? Try to make it shorter because the client don't want to see those points. You end up with a little bit less quality of a title. And then Google comes and they just rewrite the whole thing, right?
That's
It's like,
true.
oh my God. And those are bad. Those are really bad titles. The one they rewrite, they
So
they drive
that's
me
a.
crazy.
I wonder if there's a tool out there. I don't know if there is that you could and it's going to be user specific too, because a lot of times they change the title based on the
Mhm.
search query sometimes. But I
Right?
would be curious, like, how many can I get a notification in Search Console? Give me this notification. How many times are rewriting your title tags? Because that's going to tell me a signal like, hey, I'm probably not optimizing my title tags, maybe even some of the content on the page for that experience. I missed something there if Google's
Yeah.
going in to do it. Um,
I haven't seen anything like that, but that could be helpful. I can see that.
yeah, because that would give me a signal like, why are you rewriting my title tags? I would love. There's some times where like I don't want them to rewrite it because I'm trying to put like a message in there that's
Yeah.
important, and they keep rewriting it. And you're like, no, man, like, can you just use what I have? Like, how can I
Yeah.
override that? But they reserve the right to change it. So, um,
Yep, they do.
and they get it wrong sometimes too because of a glitch. I've seen that happen too.
Oh yeah, and it just drives me crazy because they pick like the weirdest sentences from the page that are like lower caps, right? Like not proper capitalization on the tag, or I mean, it kind of matches the keyword, but it just makes no sense, right? So it's just like you spend all this time writing those titles. Why do you come and just spit out things?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to Trevor about we were talking about ad copy and like okay, title tag meta script is kind of like our ad copy. They have their
Mm-hmm.
paid ads. One thing that he's been kind of leaning towards, I haven't really done it yet for the SEO side because typically when we write a title tag, it's case sensitive. I think that's the right one, right? Case sensitive. So
Yes.
every word has got
Yep.
a
Oh, capitalized.
capitalization. Yeah. He's talking about like, well, sometimes in my ads, I don't do that. I just write like a sentence structure.
Mm-hmm.
So like first letter is capitalized, but everything else is like normal structure to
Uh-huh.
kind of like break it up so it looks like it reads more
Like
normal,
text.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus like all like, hey, add. This is more of like a normal. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I've never even thought about doing that from an SEO perspective of like not title casing or title tags. Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that could make you stand out better and get a better click through rate.
I
Something
mean,
to test.
yeah, some of the tests. I don't have data to back this out, but I've been doing that for quite some time, only on blog. So articles, content, where like the title is a little bit more casual, right? It's like, the impact of speaking about reviews, right? The impact of slow velocity on reviews. Like I don't want to capitalize every word. I get it. It's a sentence. Um, but now that we're talking about this, maybe I should go back and look at the click-through rate and compare it to the service pages that are all capitalized.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. But
Mhm.
you brought up the reviews. I think it's good time for story time on the review
Yeah.
side because we talked about this when we were catching up the other day. I think it's super relevant for people to kind of at least hear. Right, you're on the
Yeah.
front lines of
Yeah.
doing work. That's the story we're telling. This is all we know. It's based on what we have seen with our own eyeballs and experience. So I'd love you to
Yes.
jump into that.
Yeah. And funny or not, I literally just recorded a podcast episode about it. So that's
Oh,
why all
right
the
on.
lighting is on. Yeah. So the it's a funny one because I mean, for starters, the team has been growing at WooBound. So I'm not in the trenches anymore, except for what I call our internal projects, which is like our own owned and operated websites or our nail salon websites or things like that. So this is one of those nail salons. This is the one that my wife operates and she works from there every day. And so anyway, long story short, right, we went on a 4-week vacation, and this shop, obviously there's a manager there, there's employee, the shop is open and running. And during this 6 weeks, right, there was no reviews coming in. And this is when it gets very interesting because we came back from the trip after a few days, like jump on back online, and I look at ranking. It's just kind of monitoring things, and I see that this salon just dropped. Like it dropped from top 3, down to 15 and 20 for the main keywords. And obviously I was freaking out, right? It's like, this is like her bread and butter. Like, this is her job. Like, we need to drive customers through the door. So I'm running all kinds of audits, like, every tool out there, Buy Local, looking at the website, looking at Search Console, all this. The website actually is still number one. It never dropped. Rankings never dropped on organic. It was just maps. And I was freaking out. It's like, I could not find anything wrong, like nothing at all. Nothing major, right? Until I saw that the last review was about 8 weeks ago. Google doesn't give you the exact date. It just says about 8 weeks ago. So that's where I'm coming from. And I'm like, okay, well, that's the only thing wrong that I see. So I call my wife, right? It's like, hey, we dropped, like, the shop is like number 15, completely out of the top. And I'm concerned because I don't even know what's going on. Like, I can't find anything wrong, except we haven't had a review. And the funny thing is, like, I make signs that are lit up, like signs on the counters that are lit up with the QR code for people to leave a review. They're connected to a software. We have a landing page. We have follow-ups. And it came down to the employees not asking for the reviews, right? But there was no reviews for 8 weeks. And so anyway, we hang up, and she immediately tells a customer at the shop, and she says, do you mind leaving a review? So this customer writes a review. I see it coming about within 30 minutes after our call. I was like, oh, she did it, right? Like, I don't know what she did, but we got a review. So I let it go. And then the next morning I scan again, refresh rankings, refresh the Google Map grid, right? Where it tells you how you're ranking on the map. And I saw the big jump again, 15 up back to top 5. And I'm like, I continue to do the audit, but I haven't touched anything else. Like, I didn't do anything. I didn't optimize, because I don't know what to do yet, right? Like, I'm still in audit mode, right? So I'm not going to just go in and change things without knowing what's wrong. So the only thing that varied, and this was a few days ago, the only thing that varied from one day to the other was that one review that came in. So, and yes, we hear about Google review velocity when it's too fast, it's too spammy, right? So you got to be a little bit consistent. I just hadn't seen the whole no reviews, you don't deserve to be at the top, you drop. And that was kind of surprising.
Yeah, I when you told me that story, I was kind of shocked, because, like, it's a good control because you didn't touch anything, you didn't change anything. The only thing you did change was that one item. There wasn't like a big algorithm update for local happening. We'll talk about the other update that was happening here in a second.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, that change it. And then, so I guess just a rule of thumb from this story is, like, get constant reviews. That seems to have an impact to solidify it. It's kind of one of those things, like, you don't know what happens until it's gone, right? Or how much you love someone until they're gone. It's like, oh, okay, now I get it. Let's get those reviews back up. And it's interesting to hear too, though, like, what facilitates getting reviews. You have all the awesome signs, the QR codes.
Yeah.
There still has to be that personal touch of, like, ask for a review. Them. That's another one that you're going to have to get used to as well.
Yes. Yeah. And, I mean, she gives instructions on all the things, how to run the day-to-day, all the operations. I cannot blame her, right? It's like, you're never going to think about reminding your employees when you're going on vacation, don't forget to ask for reviews. Like, it's just not, right? Like, it's not, I don't see that happening, but it was just so shocking.
I have seen, and this kind of brings me to an idea. I think it was like when we went to an all-inclusive somewhere, and I think maybe it was when we went to, like, Cancun, like, a couple years ago, and they were soliciting reviews, like, hey, if you do a review, I think it was like on TripAdvisor or something like that. Like, hey, give us please do a review. And can you mention my name? Whatever.
Yeah.
So, but I'm pretty sure they get kickback if their name's mentioned, right?
Yes.
So maybe that's something that could be done as far as, like, hey, dude, you get a review and they mention your name. We'll give you a little bonus here to keep it, motivated.
I've had those experiences. I can't remember where, but like where they asked me specifically, if you had a good time, if I did a good service, can you mention my name? My name is, Christian. And I find it funny because it's probably either they get a bonus or they get something out of it.
Yeah.
But if they deserve it, right, it's like, okay, I'll remember your name, or I'll go do it right now.
I would be cool if you could do, like, an attributions a setting where, like, each employee has their own QR code, and then you could tag it back to that employee, right? So it's like, all right, then you don't have to go that kind of cheesy route of, like, hey, mention my name, because that's kind of a shitty way of doing attribution, right, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, if you can have like a unique QR code that gets scanned and then gets the review, then you could go back on a monthly basis, like, all right, my 10 employees, you can see the velocity of how many times they're getting actual reviews or even interest in it. That would be interesting
Yeah.
to build out. Couldn't be that difficult to have like a unique QR that then connects to a review.
I mean, I feel like some of the simplest things when it comes to Google, it's just too complex, right? It's like we can't do it because it's too complicated, even though it sounds very simple. I don't know, but I see your point. I think that would be great. And to your earlier point about you don't know what you have until it's gone. I can tell you the story of
let's do perfect segue.
Yeah, how dependent we are on Google Maps. So I was so scared of this trip, right? Because we went to Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. And I've been to Vietnam multiple times, so I know Google Maps works fantastic, 100%. And then YouTubers, because I did a lot of research before going to a new country, and most YouTubers said Google Maps didn't work in Japan and didn't work in South Korea. It worked really good in Japan, like perfect. I was able to ride the subway, the train, directions, even schedule of the buses and the public transport is on Google Maps. I loved it. We go to South Korea and I was scared for South Korea because I knew it was not going to work. There was no chance it was going to work. I actually had a different map app they use, Kakao Maps. And I was scared because it's not even in English and you cannot enter English addresses. You have to translate the address or enter the address in Korean. And I was like, damn, I don't know how this thing's going to go. Well, I can tell you that's been a whole week that was it felt longer just because I didn't have Google Maps.
Wow.
I couldn't really navigate public transport because the public transport apps are in Korean, right? And it cannot tell you where you are, so it cannot give you directions. So I couldn't use it for that either. It was just, I couldn't use reviews. I couldn't see pictures. Like, it's just shocking how dependent we are now on the maps, right? And call it,
so
Apple or Google.
Sure.
It's just
I never
shocking.
even thought about that. Like, yeah, I guess we have such like a jaded experience in the US where it's like we are super dependent on Apple Maps, Yelp, and Google as far as like, getting the reviews, understanding what's being around, navigation itself, right? Like, I even thought about that going to another country. It's like, is this going to work? Are we good? And then, then the whole language barrier.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, even if you went old school and pulled out like an actual paper map, if that would be maybe easier.
Because like we're talking about different language and I have no clue anything, right? I don't speak any type of or version of Korean. So I had the translator, which they also say Google Translator is not the best. So I had a Korean translator too. And I don't know, it was just like very surprising how I felt like I went back in time. And comparing it to Vietnam, which Vietnam is not a top country, like it's still a developing country, nowhere the tech that Korea has. Yeah, the Google Maps works fantastic. It works great. I actually have another story I can share with you on getting catfish with reviews.
Oh, dude, I'm in.
So, speaking about all resorts right by the beach. So we were in this village in Vietnam, and there was no AC at the house that we were in, and we were just freaking. Is like, I cannot sleep here. I'm not gonna be able to sleep. No AC, freaking 90s Fahrenheit weather and humid. I'm not gonna sleep at all. So I told my wife, can we look for a hotel and go somewhere and then we can come back tomorrow? So I go on Google, right? I'm looking for hotels. This is a village, right? So this is outside of a city. There's nothing. It's just the closest hotel is 45 minutes away. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll find a taxi and get there. And might as well, it was a beach town. So I was like, oh, it's a hotel by the beach town. I wonder if I can find a hotel by the beach, right? And we can enjoy this. So anyway, I found the hotel, and they have great pictures of beachfront and the whole profile list. Not a lot of reviews. There was like 2 or 3 reviews, but they had pictures of the view, and I could see the beach. I could see the water, and I could see it on the map right on the beach. So I was like, that's it, right? It's pretty affordable. Let's go. So we take the taxi. We get there. We can't find the freaking building, and the taxi drops us exactly at the pin on Google Maps. And he said, this is what you're looking for. And we look, it's like, this is a restaurant. He's like, yeah, that's the address you have. It's a restaurant. And I'm like, no, this is not it, right? So we call them and like, where the hell is the hotel? They said, oh, we're 2 blocks away from the restaurant. And I'm like, well, this is supposed to be a beachfront hotel. What are you doing 2 blocks away from the beach? They said, yeah, that's our restaurant. It's the same company owner. The same owner owns both buildings. So we drive around. We go to the building. Terrible hotel. I think they were using stock photography. The view from the window was an empty lot full of dirt, and then the water all the way over there. And I'm like,
oh man,
my wife was pissed, right? Like, she was so disappointed and mad. And she was like, how much did you pay again? I'm like, we have AC, right? Like, let's keep this positive. There's AC here. We can sleep. And so I went on Google Maps and I suggested the pin to be moved, and they moved it within a week or so. Yeah.
That's funny. At least you're going to help out someone that's going to be in that exact situation in maybe this year, next year.
And
it's totally true, man. We do take that kind of stuff for granted here in the States of how well that kind of, it's almost like a digital infrastructure set up, right? Because like physical infrastructure in other places like Vietnam that are still developing, etc. Like you also have to think like their digital infrastructure is not fully in line either. It's definitely something to think about. So it's like, I do believe like when you're traveling, it's like you really got to do that research and be prepared for that type of experience, which can be jarring for someone that's not used to doing that, which makes sense.
And I mean, just coming back to the U.S., right? At the beginning of this week, it was kids are going back to class, and so I needed a haircut real bad, and I could not go to the try to book online. Barber said 3-hour wait because all the kids are in line. They're going to school, right? So every parent is there. So I go on Google Maps and I'm looking at the graph to see how busy it is. And it's like, it's how dependent we are, where I'm legitimately looking at the graph to find a barber that says not busy. I did not. It took me 3 days until kids were back to school, so I go get a haircut. But to that point,
how do they do that frequency of like, how do they know it's so busy? Is it like based on geo, like phone data?
I think it's based on geo, which is kind of how they calculate traffic too. It's just based on, I'm probably simplifying this too much, but to me, it's like how many phones are there, right? How fast the phone's moving, or is it slowing down? And that's kind of calculate traffic. That's my theory. And I think that's my theory on how busy the places are.
That makes sense because, when I travel, I always bring AirTags with me. I'm an Apple guy. And you know what an AirTag is? It's like a tracking beacon. Okay.
I have a few here.
Oh, perfect. So, it's probably the same sort of technology where it's like pinging off other phones in an area, you know where it's at, etc. It's like, it's all there. We just don't see it, nor do people understand like your privacy either. It's like, nah, man, like you're being tracked. Dude, they're going to have that data.
I mean, I bought this, first I bought the tags because one of my puppies left the house. Like he legit run out and we didn't know. So I started wondering. So I started wondering, it's like, I wonder if I could put a tag on him, right? And figure out where he is. But in my mind was like, well, there's no SIM card. There's no service. So how the hell am I going to find it? So I started researching. It's like, how does this thing work? Like, how am I going to find a tag that's offline? And then I saw how it works, right? How it pings other phones and like kind of borrows to other people's.
Yeah.
I was shocked. How it worked.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things too, where it's like, depending on where you're at, it's only going to be as good as it is. Like, so like in the States, it's awesome. You'll travel and you have on your bags and you're like in the airport. It's pretty spotty. It's like, is it there? Is it still there? Etc. But yeah, I have one on my dog too. It's, it's definitely not super real time versus like a phone. You can track it, but it still gives you a relative idea for it all. But yeah, the kind of creepiness of the privacy.
It's weird. I was like, excuse me, I'm using your phone to track my dog he's wearing a tag.
Yeah, no, for sure. Man, this has been awesome. I think we could probably do this a couple more times, go through a couple more stories on the SEO stuff. It's awesome to have and I mean, you've been doing SEO, as long as I've been doing it, and like the stories that we could swap back and forth. I mean, we could probably bring a couple other guys on that have been doing it as long. And it's fun because I feel like people have been doing it as long as we have been doing it, not touting anything, but we can kind of relate in certain scenarios of things. And it's still it's still a fucking shit show out there as far as like what Google's doing. Like you never really figure it out. I mean, I guess we could end on the podcast, maybe a quick story about, the site that you had that got hit by, what was it, the September helpful content update for like a whole
Last year. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden kind of revamped back up. Maybe just jump into that and we'll close it out.
Yeah. So this is an e-commerce of mine. I've had it for many years. Low key, right? Just organic ranks. It used to rank number 1, number 2, competing with Amazon. So it was like on and off. And last year, helpful content went out and my website just tanked. It completely disappeared from search. Nobody can find it. No orders. So I just told the team, no point of working like this. There's no coming back. This is not a quick fix because we don't even understand what the hell happened with this algo update. So we let it go. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks ago, we started seeing orders come in again. And I'm like, how are they finding the store? So I look at rankings and we're back on top 3 rankings for most of our keywords. We did not do anything for a year. And just this new algo update kind of realized, oh, we messed up. You deserve to be.
They swung too hard one way, and then you didn't do anything, and then the site comes back. That brings me up that other. I sent you a link this morning. I think Barry covered it over in Search Engine Land. I'm not familiar with the site, but like Hard Bacon, I think it's a .ca site. They got destroyed by that same update in 2023. The September helpful content update. They filed for bankruptcy, and then literally like 2 days later, all their traffic came back.
Exactly the same.
Thanks, Google.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Exactly the same.
Well, I think that's a good spot to stop it. Appreciate you coming on today. Where can people find you, follow you, throw what you want to throw out?
I appreciate it. Yeah. So if you want to go watch the local SEO Unlocked show on YouTube, you can search me up, Christian Hustle there. If you need some SEO help, feel free to reach out as well, WooBound.com.
Right on. Well, hey, before this thing shuts off and I turn it off, just stay on because it needs to upload. So I'm just going to let you know. I didn't let you know beforehand. I don't want you to close out the browser and not upload. So thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. All right.